Just a couple of disclaimers before I jump in. Obviously, all views are my personal views, nothing that reflects my company's position on this. And of course, I'm chocolate colored, but I have really spicy takes. So that's why disclaimer one. So jumping right in, just a little bit about myself. I've started working as a risk analyst back in India in a startup in 2011. And then I joined Google in 2012, and I've been there ever since, 11 years. So that's it. That's my life, pretty much. But Google's a really huge company, as you know, right? So it's not really, I mean, not my experience itself should not be really underwhelming. By 2018, I had moved and worked on 3 different products that are all with 1 billion users each. And I have my first patent for ML, for an ML application, really, was filed in 2018. And since then, I've done more work. Obviously, I've since moved to 2 more teams, 2 more different products. And today I work on this app called the Google Play Services. It's available on all 3 billion Android devices around the world. If you've heard of, Google doing something really weird, like when COVID launched, you suddenly had exposure notifications on your Android phone, or when Russia raids Ukraine, all Ukrainians that had an Android phone got air raid alerts. That is all my app. Thank you. Welcome. I'm standing on stage taking credit. Never mind. All right, so jumping into, I think, a little bit expanding that, right? I'm super narcissistic, so I'm going on and on about myself, but you'll get the point really soon, I swear. So what I do really, right, in daily life, I do a bunch of product pitches. There's always new ideas that come up. You have to do these, get your leadership's buy-in, get your engineering team really excited about doing this work. And then I develop a lot of strategy around, here's a bunch of products, here's different places we're going to, new form factors that are coming up, whether it's watches, whether it's wearables, on your head, how should my app be? And then I build roadmaps, because all of this, high-level planning doesn't, translate into actual work if you didn't make a solid roadmap and got your, engineers to do this, right? And then I was thinking, what? I do a bunch of important stuff, right? So my job's pretty secure. And then I started looking into what does AI do? And your eyes are not deceiving you, it's the same slide. I figured AI does all of these same things, and I'm sweating beads right now because of the lighting, but when I did discover it, I was still sweating. And I was thinking, what really, I had this really high opinion of, what value I added, and it looks like that is not really the case. And so I dug in, and I found these tons of headlines. AI has been doing all of these amazing things. It's been making pitches that actually got funded more than humans. I didn't believe it, but looks like that's a solid study. And then some CEOs have offloaded their work to AI. Insane. And of course, they're seeing lots of rapid use cases, funding, startup funding, the works. Then I figured, what? Everybody is looking at these headlines. Everybody is going through these same emotions as me. Maybe I should dive deeper and see if there is, some meat to this. And so I, of my own volition, came up with this, will I lose my job graph? That's how I think about it, right? And so the y-axis is really how well documented and structured your job is, right? So are there reams of academic, knowledge on it? Have textbooks been written about your job? And Dan's not helping by creating a ton of this material. AI is hearing. And that x-axis is really how repetitive it is. How often do you have to do the same task over and over? And the bubbles are really, the size of the bubble is really how much you're paid, right? So as you can tell, I have a thing for radiologists. I think they're going to be done in 2 years. There's so much X-ray, there's so many X-rays, there's so much information on these medical diagnoses that's available. I feel like AI will be able to do their job for them very soon. And of course, then there's a slightly, I think, less structured, slightly less repetitive job with the SWEs. And I put PM really in the bottom here. Not that I'm feeling secure. I did my research, and I'll present it to you very shortly, which is that I went to one of the AI bots on the market and was like, you know what? Let's say you're the CEO of HEB. How would you improve this 10x, right? And it gave me a fairly good answer. As you can see, the highlights are that, you know what? expand into new markets, invest in technology, something a good MBA graduate would have done. It's a pretty decent job. And it's really scary. And so I said, okay, what about Target? As like exact same thing. So you know what it's doing? It took a bunch of textbooks and said, okay, here's what any company should do to grow. Substitute name for said company, substitute market for markets they're not in, basic stuff. So you figured this out. I was like, okay, that's so reasonably well structured, and still I am probably going to have a job. And so I felt like much more secure. And then Jensen Huang, I don't know how many of you here in the audience know Jensen Huang. He's the CEO of NVIDIA, obviously one of the companies that's on the cutting edge of AI today. And he made a speech at a commencement ceremony for a bunch of students, and he said, you know what, folks, while some people are worrying that AI will take their jobs, what will actually happen is this person that's really good with using AI or leveraging it will take your job. And that sort of felt really profound to me. And I was like, somebody that knows its pitfalls, somebody that knows where to use it and when not to use it will really benefit. And everybody else will probably be worrying about it and not really get to the meat. And so that's where I decided to focus my talk. So for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you all the things I did, failed. And then there's a cool demo in the end. So you'll see how this presentation came about. So then the first thing I did, okay, so I need to be this master of AI. Go and figure out what are the best tools available on the market, right? And so I did. I found this whole list. Now, I think what will stand out to most of you is the fact that these are not AI tools. These are tools. And then AI has been slapped on top of them in line with current hype, which makes sense. So even in our job, I think you make that approach very clear where you want to use Canva, you want to use Order, you want to use TensorFlow, it's perfect. You don't have to use the AI component. Don't feel that pressure. These are great tools in of themselves. The AI is an enhancement. Often you might not need the enhancement, just like you don't need every single tool in your toolkit. You need one screwdriver, you ended up buying the 60-piece thing, right? Same problem. So the number one thing, know when to use AI. And pretty straightforward. I think on the left, these 4 points are really where I think are great use cases for us to use AI, and the right is a fantastic example of what not to do. So I'll lead with the example here. You can see the prompt. It's pretty straightforward. I'm saying I'm HEB. Sorry, I pick HEB as my example a lot because I love the store. Big fan. Since I moved to Texas, it's been my, I think, refuge. I love it. So yes, so basically if HEB launches something and it got to a total of 2 users and one of them had a bug, and I go ask ChatGPT what percentage of users had a bug, it gave me the right answer. It's half the users. But a human looking at this would have gone, if HEB launched something, it would be more than 2 users. There's something wrong in this data, which is where I think my headline comes in, because AI will always answer your question. Whether it will give you the right answer or not is up to human judgment. So you have to question the answer all the time. And this is the number one reason why I was talking to somebody before and I was saying, pick an AI and stick with it, because then you know its mistakes. It's your life partner. You know it in and out. You know where it's going to go wrong, and you're always looking out for it. And then you know when you can trust it, which really makes your work faster, right? And so the big 4 things, try and use it for directional stuff, not deterministic. And I have a good example there. You can use it for brainstorming. You can use it for trying to understand your own biases. But if you want exactly how many users are having a bug, you probably want to know a lot more than just that information. And then, of course, where the ground rules are super well established, right? Like if there is centuries of rulings on something, chess, for example, or AlphaGo or whatever, or for that matter, coding, where there's certain structure and some of the ground rules are established, it'll do a pretty decent job. It'll be okay and right in most of the cases. Chess, specifically, every case I've tried. And then for boilerplate. Now, all of us hate this, but all of us do this, where you have to put this document out in your org. There's a PR, whether it's a PRD, whether it's a strategy 1-pager. You have to write a ton of stuff. I often offload my risk section entirely to AI and let it deal with the risks. I go, here's my doc, tell me the risks, and it'll churn something out. And then the cost effectiveness. And this I was chatting with someone else as well too, which is right now it's free. And I mean, your organization might not encourage it, but they're not actively stopping you from using one of these free tools and coming up with stuff. But it's, I think the recent, most people have seen this. OpenAI put out a stat that said their model training costs $100 million each time. So it's actually really expensive tech, and it's going to be costing you something at a time. So before it costs you, I want you to experiment enough to figure out what is worth this money. And so if they're going to charge you $20, what would you pay $20 for? Pretty much. So make sure the thing you're trying to make it do is cost effective, right? And then this is I think the second biggest piece, driving demand. As PMs, I feel like we are in this super unique position where we create the demand for our products. And we had limitations before. Your engineering team was telling you couldn't do X or Y or Z. Your design team didn't have enough, people or time, things on their plate to deliver something. All of that can change with AI. We can push our teams to adopt this. We can ourselves adopt it and say, I will create the demand for my product. I will make sure my job is safe because I'm doing certain things. And when I said creating demand, it's obviously, it's your same product, but it could be personalized. It's your same product, but it could be conversational. And I'm just calling out a few little things. I have a daughter that really loves My Little Pony, and I love to teach her math. So I'm like, I'll make a dot book. So I can go online today to, I don't know, any of these image generation sites, a number of them, and go, give me a dot outline of My Little Pony. It would. I could print it out. I'll give it to her. This could be a business model. This could be a book. Somebody could do this. Or your LTK. I don't know if there's any LTK folks in the audience here. But if you were, and right now you give coupons, instead you could say, instead of a 5% discount on this merch, which you probably don't care about, I'll give you a selfie with that influencer that was pushing this merch, and you could just generate it with AI. Don't have to actually have the influencer do anything. So similarly, conversational. Now this was fun. I was talking to someone, this came up organically, so I'm just going to use it and share credit. Whoever that was who I talked to about Wayfair, please raise your hand. Somebody. Oh, I see you, Kitty. Right there. Oh, perfect. Yes. So I was just talking. Today you go to any website. Let's take Wayfair. They're going to slap their 50,000 products at you. The onus is on you to use their filtering and figure out that you want this blue-colored couch for your living room, or that your husband likes a recliner. In my head, a new Wayfair would simply be a blank page with a single input box that goes, what do you want? And you talk to it about what you want. I'm looking for a gift for my spouse. My spouse, then you'll go, okay, what age is your spouse? My spouse is X years old. Here's their interests, few things. Now, and then it'll go, oh, based on all of this conversation I just had with you, here's 20 products I think you'd like. Pick one. Straightforward. The onus is on us to say, what should this experience change to be like? It's the same website, it's the same catalog. It's just the experience that's changing. And that's what I want us all to think about. The demand curve is different now. The demand is conversational. You have a salesman that is personalizable, that will go and talk to somebody and sort of react well and then do the pitching for you. And then the last one is play to your strengths. Now, there is I think a very natural instinct for us to say, I will go and adopt the new technology, but that might not be your forte, right? This man here is probably really interested in painting. Making chairs is all he likes. He's going to paint it white. He's going to paint it yellow, however that works. And just if they were forced to go do PM work, obviously that's not going to work for them. But if this person could start using AI as a way to enhance their painting, that'll probably be much more fruitful. Now, let me give a concrete example here. How many people here have understood the full context of this slide that I was setting up just now? With the raise your hands. Barely? All right. How many people caught that I was saying man, 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 when there's actually a woman on the slide? Right? So it's a lot more people. And that's the funny part about this. All of us, I figured out, have the superpower that we can easily identify a mistake. And if you make a mistake, humans looking at it, subconsciously, unconsciously will identify the mistake, will hone in on it, and may not listen to the rest of it, but they know the mistake, right? And this is our strength. And then just as an example, what is really good at making mistakes? AI. And so use the mistakes to get it. And I have a really a tiny demo. in terms of how I made this deck. And this is actually me doing all of the typing. So I'd like you all to watch this video for a quick second. And you have to say, please, you don't know when AI is going to take over, so. This is Duet AI, Google's product. And yeah, pretty much it gave me a structure of the slides. Now, you've heard my presentation. This is the last slide, really. And you know that that's not the structure I used. But the thing it did was it told me, here's a structure, and then I can poke holes at it. That doesn't make sense. The role of an AI product manager is no different from an actual product manager. So I poked a hole there. I poked holes at other things that it said to me, and then my deck was here. And as proof of concept that I am truly AI-driven, I actually made this in one day. Arturo sent me an email, and I was like, listen, I'll get you to you by end of day. I started it then, and I finished the deck in 24 hours, mostly using AI, mostly by asking it something, proving it wrong, asking it something, proving it wrong, and then, of course, my learned experience over the few years. So I hope that was useful and helpful, and there's a bunch of tools that I've used in there. Feel free to catch me after or ask me now. I have 10 seconds left. Sorry. Yeah, a few minutes, I'm sure. So thanks a lot for listening to this. I don't know if you want. Oh, yes, one last thing. So the same speech with Huang super influenced me. There's two quotes there. One was the one I used before, and the other one's this one, which is, please don't walk, run. Run like hell because this is coming and you don't want to be left behind. I mean, there's a lot of hype, but the hype aside, I'm not trying to hype it even more. You just want to cut through that crud, and I hope some of the tools that I have and some of the discussion I have here will help you cut through that crud. And yeah, thanks a lot for listening. What I did was I did a little bit of homework before this, and I want to open up the floor for questions, but I found that last year, either the questions were not recorded or no one asked questions. What happened? Any questions? Perfect. Sorry. Go ahead.
Back to the slide on the radios.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Caught my attention with trades around. Why is that?
So yeah, the trades like an electrician or a plumber. In my head, these are all like well schematized jobs. So even if like every single plan of a house in existence right now was not digitized, going forward it could be, or it is already digitized at least in the last few years, right? And so where the plumbing lines are going, houses are already being constructed in 3D. So I don't need an electrician or plumber anymore. Technically, the printer could lay pipes while it is building the actual house. And in my head, they are actually ripe for disruption. The construction industry is already doing a ton of this, but they're not paid that much. So they don't get, I think, the same effect as if you fired 50% of the radiologists in a hospital network. So that's why the bubble's tiny, but they're really, really ripe for disruption. There's a ton of information out there. AI can easily replicate a ton of work they do.
What's your thought on senior PM using AI versus junior PM using AI? How do you think that works?
Yes. So Yatin's question was that what do you think is the difference between a senior PM using AI and a junior PM using it, and how that would disrupt the market? I think AI is really a great democratizer. I feel like there would no longer be a senior versus a junior PM because of how fast this iterative cycle is. The big difference between the junior and the senior PMs, I don't know if Dan will correct me, is I believe experience, is their learned knowledge, is the fact that they've had these pitfalls and gone ahead, right? Now AI can simulate a lot of that for you. It's going to tell you, XYZ, and anybody really with a good strategic, structured thought can, I think, take that knowledge away and apply it. So in my head, it's going to blur the lines a little bit, and the seniority will probably no longer come from just having experience. It will probably come from having a lot of diverse sort of, product knowledge, a lot of different things you bring to the table around, how to rally teams, how to inspire people, or, how can my engineering team and my lawyers, I guess, work better together? How do I communicate better with regulators, or how do I convince users about privacy? I think those aspects will probably be much more important than, oh, this person had a really nice roadmap or, was great at XF and stakeholder management or something like that. Does that make sense? Any other? Oh, sorry.
Sounds like you've had a couple of years using AI, maybe a head start on some of the rest of us. How has your usage evolved, maybe with milestones and the capabilities?
That's actually a fantastic question. When we talk about AI today, I don't think I have a head start at all, because 100% of your thought space right now is consumed with one aspect of AI. It's the generative aspect. The Gen AI piece is really what you're all thinking about when you say AI. In my head. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I would say it's a generalization for the good majority of people. And my entire experience has actually been on the other 90% of that iceberg that's below the water. I was building the infra for things. I was setting up. Sure, you have a model, but how do you feed it inputs? How do you trust the outputs? How does a third party trust these outputs? So these handshake mechanisms, how do you make sure you don't overload somebody? How do you, tweak these signals? How do you build these models right so that it does? So I guess I don't know how much of you have AI experience, but basically, if you could make a 100 GB model, it'd be way more accurate than a 1 GB model. But a 100 GB model wouldn't fit everywhere. And so that's where my entire expertise was. So it's on the building end of things, not necessarily on the using end of it. So on the using end, I'm just as new as you all, and which is why I think some of these insights are more relatable, because I've just been using it just like you all, like in the last couple of years, to be honest. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think so.
Thanks. Sorry.
Is there a particular website or a book or something that you recommend as far as, thank you, is there a book or a website you recommend for those of us who are new to using AI so that we can understand the pitfalls sooner and work around them?
Not really, in the sense that what I found is all of them are equally, good, so to speak. I was going to say mediocre and I stopped. And the only true way, that's why I was saying, that's why I was calling it a life partner. You can get enough information about them from a social page or whatever, but you will only truly know them when you work with them consistently. And in my head, the wrong move is to research and pick the right one. The right move is to say, I will pick something that works for me today and then grow with it, because no one's going to sit on stasis here, right? OpenAI, Duet, Vertex, Amazon, none of them is going to be stasis. The tool is going to change from what it is now to what it will be in 6 months. So you can grow with it is the easier solution than saying consistently I'll keep reevaluating and wait for some like final amazing feature set to come out, right? So that's probably my recommendation. Sorry, you have the next question.
What's your strategy for addressing biases?
Fantastic question. I don't know that I have the right answer here, to be very honest, right? I think we're all really fighting it. And I've seen our own AI do incredibly crazy, in terms of biases. And when we were building it even, right? I'll give you an example. I don't have an answer, but I'll give you an example of what happened with me. So we were trying to figure out, how do I identify good people that were transacting with me versus, people that are trying to commit fraud. And somehow, out of the blue, my AI model decided that everybody that had an IP address from a certain part of Florida that shall not be named and had the last name with the son in it, so like a Jackson, a Johnson, a Frederickson, whoever, was probably a fraudster, high probability of fraud. Why? And so the way we deal with these things is we continuously iterate on these models and we start looking at, all of these signals and why it's thank you, why it is probably trying to put someone in a certain way and tweak and twist. But as a user, you generally don't have all of that controls, right? So as a user, I'm mostly trust but verify. So I'll let it say something and then I'll start poking holes into, or if I was going to use it in my work, then I'll double check it in most cases. Actually, no pitching, but Google really made this a workflow now. So you can ask our AI something, and then it'll say, do you want to double check this? And it'll just Google search it for you and double check it on the flip end without the AI and say, does this really work? And because basically we figured all of us were doing it, we should let consumers do it too. Right? And I have 5 minutes apparently, 4 now. So
Yeah, so I'm curious, like you mentioned that humans are really good at detecting the problem. Have you had any experience with being able to feed that back into the AI and have it adjust the answers?
yes, actually, well, I'll let this video play while I say it. Basically, what ChatGPT does this too is that once it gives you the answer, it's going to tell you, did you like the answer or not? And you know what, if you wanted to give verbal feedback about the answer, you could. So often, like I was talking to somebody, like we used it for coding once and it made up APIs that didn't exist. It created Java classes that didn't matter, like end nowhere. So we would like type those things in and go, yeah, these are the issues it has. And yeah, often they do get resolved with retraining in many cases. So yes, there is definitely a good feedback loop here. Again, right now at consumer scale, this is very useful. You get it for free, you give us the feedback, and we will improve that model sort of thing. And that's what all of the AI models are doing today. So ChatGPT will let you do this too. I just have the Google example live, that's all. So you see that refine or rate this suggestion here in the bottom. That's really where, so as an employee, I can actually tell it to say the answer a certain way, and it'll take my suggestion with a little bit more weightage. But other people can simply say, this was bad, here's why, and it'll rate you with everybody else that's also saying the same thing probably.
With your experience in managing the back end, what do you see as the constraints that are holding back AI now versus maybe in the future? You mentioned 1 gigabyte versus 100, bandwidth, the size of the output. Is it more like back end constraints or human constraints limiting what's next?
I think always software runs ahead of hardware, and the constraints are mostly in hardware in my head. Software can do a lot more, and we will probably explore a ton of this. You'll probably not need this $1,000 NVIDIA GPU to train models anymore. So it's the hardware. The software's there. Sorry.
So in your example of the zip code in Florida and everyone was selling the name, we all immediately intuitively knew that's nonsense. But what a much more complex area like diagnosing on a radiology scan, for example. Do we still need radiologists to question the answer?
Oh, absolutely. But the point is that's why that in my example, I was careful to say you fired 50% of the radiologists, not all of them. In my head, the same radiologist could do 2x the job or 10x the job even, because they are now not diagnosing it themselves. They're simply saying, was this diagnosis correct or not? And that is a faster conclusion to arrive at than looking at these scans independently, right? So that was the idea. 1 minute. Sorry, last minute. So maybe one question and.
I've heard some colleagues worry about putting proprietary information into AI tools. How do you quell those fears so that people will use them?
Oh, no, there is no quelling it. That is very true.
Oh, okay.
You do not want to put proprietary information in the public free tools.
But as a product manager, you swim in proprietary information.
Oh, absolutely. So in my head, there is a paid offering where you are allowed to put your own information and that will not be used for model training data. But if you're using the free version, then it's all fair game because, like I said, it's $100 million to train the model. That has to mean something for the company that's providing it for free. So it's not just Google, like OpenAI, Amazon, whoever. We are all doing the same thing right now. And so, yes, if you're that Samsung engineer that put their chip on ChatGPT, please don't.
Thank you.
It's not a good idea. Awesome. That was my time. Thanks a lot, folks. This is really engaging.